And I've just turned on my video as well.
Also able to see you. Thank you, Dr. Pavan.
Correct. Just push it to one side. Well, thank you, Dr. Kavitan, for inviting me to talk on this wonderful platform. And thanks the organizers of the Asia Optometry Congress for inviting me to deliver a talk today. So I will be taking you through the evidence-based myopia control interventions. The emphasis will be on the optical management strategies, which are the spectacles and the contact lens. I want to start with this slide, which clearly indicates that myopia management or myopia control is no more a mere prescription of a single vision lens, and it's clearly beyond what we're seeing there. And with the evolving field, if you don't stay updated and upgraded, I think we will be outdated very soon. And this lecture today will outline the recent evidences in relation to the topic for the myopia management, emphasis on the spectacle and the contact lens. So I've got 4 parts to this lecture. First, I will be tapping on the what's the real goal for myopia management. And then we will discuss more about the theories that are linked with the development of the technologies that we have in both the spectacle and the contact lens format. And at the last, I will talk about a couple of cases where I've prescribed the spectacle or the contact lens in relation to the controlling myopia. So what is the goal of myopia management? Clearly, yes, it's beyond providing single vision lens, but what is it? I think it's twofold. Number one, we're looking at myopia prevention. And number two, we're looking at identifying children or any individual who is at risk for myopia progression, and then putting them on some sort of myopia control strategy so that they don't develop some sort of pathologic myopia. One concept that we all have to keep in mind while doing myopia management is the holistic approach. There are too many things that are available right now for us to control myopia, but what do we really pick? I hope the lecture today will address that point as well. As a part of myopia management, we're also looking at delivering the evidence-based myopia management based on the risk factors. I will tap a bit on the risk factors and why is it really important. Otherwise, we are only shooting in the dark with the technology that's available in our hand. Now, why is it really important? Clearly, like Professor indicated before my talk, 50% at risk of developing myopia by 2050. Children anywhere in the world tend to progress, and more importantly, about 15% on average, ranging between 10 to 20%, tend to have rapid myopia progression, which are progressing by more than 1 diopter, who are invariably at risk for developing some sort of pathologic myopia lesions. So we're looking at big numbers as well. It is estimated that 5 billion to be myopic by 2050, of which 1 billion to have high myopia. Now, the problem with myopia clearly is that, looking at axial elongation, due to which the outer coats of the eyeball stretch, leading to the complications that can lead to visual impairment. Now, as an optometrist attending the Asia Optometry Congress today, I think we're all aiming at how do we stop this axial elongation? How can we look at the myopia control options so that the axial elongation is really inhibited? And the myopia and its management, I want to bring this slide to indicate how quickly the field is evolving, much like the COVID-19 protocols. Every day we have something new, and it's important for us to be really updated. The myopia control strategies can be broadly classified into the environmental, optical, or the pharmacological strategies, and I will be tapping on the optical solutions. In the optical format, we have the old ones, such as the bifocal or the multifocal progressive addition lenses. And then more recently, we have the peripheral defocus spectacles and the contact lens. Of course, we have the orthocretology lenses, and more recently, we have diffusion optics technology, which is contrast-based. So in all, we have various segments even within the optical strategies. So let's tap one by one to understand how does this really work and what is the evidence out there in relation to their efficacy. While we have these myopia control strategies, I think we should not be shooting in the dark by just prescribing one without knowing the mechanism and without knowing whom it should be prescribed. And that's where we need to look at the holistic approach, given that myopia is multifactorial and it's not just one factor that is really triggering for the axial elongation. Unless you understand what is the risk factor that is triggering for the axial elongation, I think as an optometrist or as an eye care professional, we will not be able to do 100% justice. So coming back to the same slide, yes, we have multiple options. We don't want to shoot in the dark. We really want to understand the mechanisms for why they are working and how they are working. And then we want to put them on some sort of myopia control strategies to help the child or any individual who is having myopia progression. So starting with the near work theory. Near work theory indicates the two broad mechanisms for why near work could be linked to myopia or myopia progression. Number one is the mechanical tension theory that indicates that more and more you accommodate, the more and more stress is induced at the level of equator that increases the ciliary choroidal tension, and that can lead to the eyeball expansion. And number two, during near work, we tend to accommodate obviously, and there is a bit of lag. So this lag acts like a hyperopic defocus, and eventually that can trigger for the blur or the defocus, and then that eventually leads to the eyeball expansion. Now to counteract the near work, all in all, we have a simple solution, which is bifocal or the progressive addition lenses. Basically, you are trying to reduce the accommodative demand for near, or you want to relax the accommodation by providing them with the near add. As a progressive addition lens, we have intermediate and the near zone apart from the distant zone. And progressive addition lenses indicated statistically significant effect in controlling myopia, but clinically, if you think this is not much. And these bifocal or the multifocal lenses are known to work great when they have the high accommodative lag or somebody with near esophoria, because you're trying to relax the accommodation and you're trying to ease the pressure at the eye during the near work. Next comes the executive bifocal with addition of 1.5, and they've induced the 3 prism basin, because this is known to help in cases where individuals with myopia plus exophoria, which could lead to the positive lens induced oculomotor imbalance, and that's where you want to have a basin prismatic effect. Again, in comparison to the single vision lenses, the prismatic bifocal or the bifocal really work in beneficial effect. Prismatic bifocal showing much more greater efficacy in controlling myopia progression compared to that of the bifocal. I mean, if you compare the bifocal versus the prismatic bifocal, the effect is not very different, but there is some effect there. And Essilor has come up with a myopilux version of the lenses to counteract the near story. As I said, either you're relaxing the accommodation, reducing the demand, or playing around with the near esophoria. This is the paper published about a decade ago, 2013, as a review by Professor Earl Smith, where we don't have latest generation of spectacles, but just in comparison, bifocal, progressive addition lenses and the executive type, the efficacy is about 20 to 40%. So coming to the latest peripheral defocus lenses. So why these peripheral defocus work and what's the mechanism behind them? One story that we all have to understand is that the peripheral retina seems to play an important role in myopia genesis or in myopia progression. So studies indicate that the signals from the periphery of the eye may play an important role apart from the signals from the fovea. In other sense, visual signals from fovea may not be essential for ophthalmology. This might seem a bit bizarre, but if you look at the experiments conducted on various animals, especially where fovea was ablated, fovea is not functional. When the defocus was induced, eyeball still went on to develop myopia. So which indicates that a fovea may not be essential in controlling the eyeball growth. Now, another compelling evidence comes from the again animal experiment where the optic nerve was dissected, as you're seeing in the image. Now, the expectation is that if fovea, all the signals from fovea are really important, when you dissect the optic nerve, when the information is not really reaching the high command or the brain, you expect that the eyeball should not be even responding to anything. But when the form deprivation was induced, eyeball still went on to elongate. So eyeball elongated even without optic nerve, which indicates that something in the periphery could be driving the eyeball elongation. Now, before I talk about the peripheral refraction or the latest myopia control lenses, want to take you to how eyeball expansion actually happens. I mean, when you talk about eyeball being elongated, clearly it's not that only at one point eyeball is expanding from, the 22.2 millimeters of actual length change to 22.4 millimeters actual length, not just at the level of fovea or it's not just at the level of visual axis. What we are looking at is eyeball being expanded all the way from the limbus, which is called the global expansion model. Eyeball can expand all the way from the equator, which is called the equatorial expansion model. Eyeball can expand only at the posterior pole, much like what we see in staphyloma, which is the posterior pole expansion model. Now, coming back to the peripheral retinal theory, clearly the signal seems to be dominating. Now, what can go wrong in the periphery when eyeball is expanding? Now that we know that eyeball is expanding, the shape factor comes into the picture. Eyeball can be more prolate in shape or more oblate, or in other sense, in simpler terms, we can say it's much more steeper or much more flatter. If the eyeball is much more steeper, the rays in the periphery are no more on retina, but actually are behind the retina, or in relation to the center, they are at different plane. Now, this is what is called as the hyperopic defocus. Let's see that in detail. In case of emmetropic eye, as you see in that image there, you see that the rays in the center and the periphery of the eye, which is point P, are on the retina. There's no problem there. In case of hyperopic eye, eyeball is a bit oblate or much more flatter, although the central rays are behind the retina with accommodation being relaxed. The rays in the periphery, as you see here, are relatively in front. This is called relative peripheral myopia. Again, no problem with that. The problem with the myopic eye is eyeball being much more steeper. The central rays are in front of retina, obviously. That's why we call myopia. But as you go towards periphery, the eyeball, the peripheral rays seems to be relatively hyperopic in comparison to the center. And this point P, triggering for the relative peripheral hyperopia, can act like a myopia-genic factor and then trigger for the myopia development or myopia progression. So what can go wrong in an uncorrected eye, or if you give single vision correction or maybe under correction? We always talk about, hey, if you want to do under correction, is it really great? In an uncorrected myopic eye, this is what is seen typically, especially in East Asian eyes. The central rays are myopic. As you go towards periphery, the rays are much more hyperopic in nature. The moment you put them on single vision correction, it's a negative lens, diverging lens. The rays that are passing through the lens are all diverging. The central rays are on the retina. Great, we are happy because the child is reading 20/20 or much better than that. But unfortunately, we are ignoring the periphery of the eye. And if you see that, because of the lens type, even if you undercorrect, the rays are diverging to start with. So the rays in the periphery are going to be much more behind the retina, and that can trigger. So what is design? What do we want? What we want is optimal correction for the distance viewing. And in the periphery, you want more and more myopic defocus. If you do under correction, it's not really going to help because you're ignoring the periphery. You're not really considering the lag, too many factors. And studies indicated that in comparison to single vision, if you do under correction, it's actually going to aggravate the situation because it's inducing blur at the level of eye. So this is the various myopia management strategies. If the bars are going towards right side, which means it's working great. If it's going towards the left side, it's not really working. Instead, it's actually aggravating the situation in comparison to the single vision lens. So under correction, that's what I have highlighted. As you see, it's indicating on the left side, and which means it's actually aggravating. So no under correction at all. So based on the peripheral theory, retinal periphery is important. Peripheral hyperopic defocus need to be counteracted. Signals from periphery can dominate. There is defocus in the periphery. So these are the solutions that can be used to counteract the relative peripheral hyperopia. We got multiple lenses. The industry friends have developed these. Essilor has developed the Stellest, who has developed the MyoSmart. We have MyoVision from the Zeiss. And in the contact lens version, the widely accepted or widely used MySight, and we have sealed EDOF lenses as well. I thought I will just quickly go through the efficacy of these lenses in the next few slides. Now, MyoVision lenses came into the picture much more than a decade ago. Again, the central, there's a optimal correction for distance. As you go towards periphery, the more and more plus power is induced. And they've tried different designs, meaning the designs are based on the diameter of the optical zone. The studies indicated that only if somebody has parental myopia, these lenses have shown good efficacy. So, I mean, you can argue that why only parental myopia, why not other cases? There is a debate about, is this really beneficial if you prescribe it in the individuals who do not have parental myopia. The more recent versions are the Hoya MyoSmart lenses. This has got the central clear optical zone for the distance viewing, and in the periphery you have this lenslets, 400 multiple defocus lenses, which are about 33 millimeter in diameter, and it surrounds the central zone as you see in this image here. I mean, if you ask, if you're looking at through a regular visual inspection, you will not even appreciate that this is, too many lenslets are incorporated, unless you put it at an angle and then look at the lens. So overall, the studies conducted in multiple ethnicities, and this is a study coming from Hong Kong, indicate that 50 to 60% efficacy in controlling myopia. This is the control. On x-axis, you are seeing the timeline, 0 to 24 months. On y-axis, you're seeing the refraction change. If you do not prescribe anything, these are the control ones, the myopia changed by 1 diopter. However, if you put them on DIMS, which stands for defocus incorporated multiple segments, they are in control by good 50%, because the one without MyoSmart, the myopia progression is 1 diopter, and with MyoSmart it's actually 0.25 only, and with actual length, this is again with MyoSmart, the actual length has changed only 0.2 millimeter. Without the lenses, it went to good 0.5 millimeter. Now, Stellest, again developed from the Essilor, similar technology, but they've called it as the highly aspheric lenses technologies. I beg your pardon, I want to say the similar philosophy, but different technology. Now they have 11 concentric rings with the aspheric lenses, the bigger volume, which is known to induce the greater myopic defocus. They have tested highly aspheric lenses and the slightly aspheric lenses. The efficacy is 67% for the spherical equivalent. As you see there, if you don't prescribe them any lens, 0.75 diopter. If you put them on highly aspheric lenses, they only changed by 0.25 diopter. Even the similar efficacy with action as well. Moving on to the contact lens. Contact lenses are there since centuries, and only recently we have myopia control options in the contact lens mode. So widely discussed are the MySight from the Group of Vision and the 3-year studies. They've done multiple studies after this as well, but I thought I will show you 3-year randomized clinical trial outcomes. These lenses have central zone to correct the myopia, so distance viewing, and they have concentric rings to give the simultaneous myopic retinal defocus with +2 rad. And the efficacy again is about 50 to 60% because with the spherical equivalent, it's about 59%, and actual elongation, it's about 52%. I know the next speaker will be talking about the orthokeratology. I want to highlight that orthokeratology also works in a similar philosophy. You're flattening the central cornea, but in the mid-periphery, there is a steepening, which induces more and more myopic defocus. And more myopic defocus, much like what we discussed before with MySight, or with Stellest, or with the MyoSmart, or with MyoVision. Similar philosophy, they're bringing in more and more myopic defocus in the periphery. So the efficacy again is about 50 to 60% with orthokeratology as well. So quickly, I will take you through a couple of cases where I've seen in the clinic and put them on some sort of myopia control strategy. So first case is a 25-year male. You're thinking, okay, myopia, we're looking at children, but look at this. This is 25-year-old male and who's a professional cricket player, clearly more time outdoor. He's having a complaint of frequent change in spectacle power for last 10 years. He was interested in refractive surgery, but given the myopia progression, he was not suitable for LASIK or SMILE. They were referred to the myopia center. And we have noted that this is a case of adult with myopia progression, age of onset of myopia, 15 years, parental myopia, both parents myopic, time outdoors, is a cricketer. So clearly, you know that this kid is actually, well, not kid, but young adult is actually spending a lot of time in outdoor. The central refractive error is -1.5 in one eye, -9 in other eye. Let's concentrate on the left eye now. Lag decent, esophoria pretty decent as well. Now, if you map the refractive error all the way from 2010 to 2021, which is when I've seen him for the first time in the clinic, the left eye progressed significantly, or there's a constant, -1 became -2, -5, -7, -8, -9. There's something that we need to do for the left eye. Actual length clearly matches or approximately matches with what we see. We mapped the peripheral refraction. We used open field or refractor to map the peripheral refraction. Central, there is -9.5. If you take the spherical equivalent, in the periphery, it's only -7. So there's relative peripheral hyperopia of 2.5 diopter, and this is how we map. We ask the individual to look at extreme angles in the visual field, and we map the peripheral refraction. Since we found the relative peripheral hyperopia, we have prescribed them with the seed contact lens. This is lead-off design, multifocal contact lens, center distance, periphery more and more add. We asked them to come back after 4 months. And as you see here, this is how the distance, center distance design work. In the periphery, it induces more and more myopia. Typically, you expect that the relative peripheral hyperopia is seen. This is data from India. But long story short, in 5 months, we did not see any change in action. All right, so we said, okay, continue with what you're doing, and we will see you again after 5 more months. So I've been seeing him for last 6 months, every 6 monthly, and you see that after I prescribed the myopia control strategy in terms of contact lens, the refractive error did not change. So we're pretty happy. Condition seems stable for the last 2 years, and we said we will continue with the same format. The lesson to learn here is peripheral refraction. I think really mapping helped. Adults can also be prescribed with myopia control strategies. I think we should not be go with an assumption that only children needs myopia control strategy. So optical strategy was prescribed and we got. The second solution or second case that I have is of a 13-year-old we've seen in the clinic in 2020 has myopia at the age of 5. Other things are decent, is doing a lot of near work. So we said, okay, the 2020 -1 -1.5 in 2020 November, the refractive error jump in the left eye to -2. And we said, let's monitor and take a call in the next step. The person has came back again. We saw there is a bit of progression. So we said, in view of progression, we go with bifocal lenses here. So we prescribe them with addition of +2. Bifocal is doing a lot of near work. We said if bifocal doesn't work, we will start with pharmacological management as well. So again, we repeated biometry. Again, clearly no changes. We have seen this case after 1 year as well. If you see, before prescribing bifocal, 0.18 millimeter change in axial length. After giving bifocal is 0.12 in 1 year. So in 1 year before prescribing bifocal is whatever we have seen in 4 months, we could see that changes or even lesser than that in year time. So if you see this November to March, just in 4 months time, eyeball went on to progress by 0.18 millimeter. Whereas 2021 to 2022, in 1 year, it's only changed by 0.1. So I think bifocal as an anti-myopia strategy or myopia control really worked in this case. Of course, it didn't really control 100%, but somewhere we can also think of combination strategy. So coming back, we recently also have the diffusion optics technology that looks at altering the peripheral contrast in the eye, and that also known to control myopia. This is much more recent technology. Given the time constraint, I'm not going into the details of that. So in summary, I think myopia control is beyond providing single vision lenses. It's clearly time to act now, given the growing numbers and the need for us to really act to control the myopia. While we have these options, I think holistic approach is best, and we should not be shooting in the dark. Unless you map the risk factors, you may not be able to do the justice. Optical strategies are now available to us. I think it's available in multiple countries. Spectacles and contact lens do show very good efficacy. I would feel always that the spectacle and contact lens are always best, given that you're dealing with myopia, which means even it acts like correction and also for the control. So this is my mantra. I say that we need to be understanding that it's multifactorial, number 1. Number 2, map wherever X factors you can. Number 3, monitor very regularly and put them on some sort of myopia control strategies. So with this, I thank you for your attention. Over to you, Lydia.
Thank you, Dr. Pavan, for presenting the evidence for myopia control using spectacle and contact lenses so clearly. Now, before we go for a short break, there'll be another poll specifically for optometrists in Singapore because it is needed for the CPE accreditation.